In this special build edition of the AI Show, we will hear from Vishwak Senakanan, Program Manager on the Bot Framework team. Vishwak will talk through the advanced understanding and language generation capabilities offered by the Bot Framework Composer. Make sure you tune in.
Hello everyone, I'm Vishwak, Program Manager on the Bot Framework team. In this session, you will learn about some of the advanced language understanding and language generation capabilities offered by Bot Framework Composer. Let's jump right in. So here's the agenda. First, I'll give you an overview of Bot Framework Composer. Then I'll get you oriented to some of the core building blocks for conversational applications. For the rest of the session, you will learn about the advanced language generation and language understanding concepts. These advanced capabilities enable your users to talk to your bot in more natural and meaningful ways. So what is Bot Framework Composer? Bot Framework Composer is an open source cross-platform tool for developers to design and build conversational applications. It offers a one-stop shop collaborative bot building experience that seamlessly integrates language understanding, language generation, dialogue, and memory management into a cohesive visual authoring tool. Please visit aka.ms/composer to get set up with Bot Framework Composer. Next, let's spend some time on the core building blocks. First up is language understanding. It is about understanding the user's intention as well as being able to extract meaningful pieces of information called entities or variables from what the user said or typed. Dialogue represents how your bot decides what it needs to do next. In some cases, it might decide to come back with a response. In other cases, it might need to go make a backend API call or ask the user for additional pieces of information. Language generation, in some sense, is reverse of language understanding. Given what your bot knows up until that point in time, how does it generate grammatically correct, meaningful, yet variable responses to communicate back with the user? Applications typically require memory, and conversational applications are no different, except there are 4 key memory scopes that bots typically store information in. As an example, the bot might choose to remember specific pieces of information that is tied to a user. On the other extreme end, it might choose to keep information in a highly volatile memory scope called the turn memory scope. Bot Framework Composer brings all of these core building blocks required to build conversational applications into a cohesive visual authoring canvas. So what are we building in this session? In this session, we will be building a very simple birthday bot. It remembers the user's name and their date of birth, and then you can answer or you can ask it questions like, how many days till my birthday, or can you look up a historic event or a celebrity fact or a celebrity birthday for a given date. The session is demo heavy. First, I'll give you a walkthrough of a very simple birthday bot that has basic language understanding and language generation capabilities. Then we will look at how to add some of the advanced language generation and understanding capabilities to the birthday bot. The source code for all the demos that are in this session is available at the link below. Let's take a look at the first demo. The very first thing I want to show you here is how to get Composer. Visit aka.ms/composer. Composer is an open source cross-platform tool available on GitHub, so you can visit the site to get set up with Bot Framework Composer. And if you go under releases, you can find a cross-platform Electron app that you can download and install. I've gotten set up with Bot Framework Composer. In fact, I have built a very simple birthday bot that uses basic language understanding and language generation capabilities. So let me walk you through what I have here. A bot itself is made up of a collection of dialogues. And so I have 2 different dialogues here. Each dialogue has 1 or more triggers. Each trigger has 1 or more actions. The action itself is configurable through the property editor. So when you click on an action, you can see or specify the properties for that specific action. Now let's take a look at all the triggers we have here. So the first trigger is a trigger that will help your bot to welcome a user anytime a new user joins a conversation. So it's a very simple flow, and the bot is going to say, I'm the birthday bot, how can I help you today? And that's going to be the welcome message. I've also added a couple of triggers here on intent triggers. So if the user says something to this effect, here are examples of what the user can say, then we would execute these actions, or the bot would execute these actions. If the user says something like, hi, or my name is such and such, then we initiate the user profile dialog. And so you can compose different dialogues by tucking them away into different flows. So here's the get user profile dialog. It has a single on begin dialog trigger. So when this dialog begins, these actions execute. We remember any entities that are extracted by the recognizer using the @ notation. And if we don't have any of the entities represent user's name, then the bot is going to ask the user for their name. Composer provides a rich set of actions that you can use for your bot to actually do something in reaction to a specific trigger. In this case, I'm using a text input. So the bot is going to ask the user their name by prompting for that. And you can also do more. For instance, when the bot responds, here is where that particular piece of information is going to be stored in memory. So user.profile.name will have the user's name. Inputs in Composer offer additional capabilities out of the box. For example, you can actually do validations on user input. So here I'm saying the user's name must be at least 3 characters in length, at most 50 characters in length. These expressions are expressed using adaptive expression. You can pretty much use adaptive expressions through validations as well as in conditions. Any place you write expressions, it's using adaptive expressions. So if these validations fail, then the bot will render an invalid prompt. So in this case, it's going to say, sorry, whatever you said is not going to work. I'm looking for at least 3 to 50 characters in length. And you can also do additional configurations for input. For instance, we don't want to keep asking the user for their name forever. So in this case, the bot has been configured to stop after 3 times. And if after 3 times we haven't successfully got a value or valid value from the user, then the bot is going to assume a default value of human. But not just that, it'll send a response saying, okay, I'm going to assume your name is human for now, but you can always say, my name is your name to reintroduce yourself to me. Next, the bot will ask the user for their date and month of birth, and we are using a date time input action to be able to accomplish that. Once we get all that information, we use adaptive expressions to format the user's input month and date into user.profile.birthday, and then we read back when the next birthday is. Switching back to the main bot, or main dialog, I should say, get day still has got a little bit of a more complex flow. So we try to secure a date and month, and if we don't have one, then we do the user profile, as you can see from the flow here. Once we have the date and month, then we go ahead and format it to get the difference between now as well as the next birth date for the user, and then read it back. To talk to the bot, you can simply click start or restart bot. I've already did that. To test the bot, you can test it in emulator by clicking on this link. Again, I have installed and configured bot framework emulator. So let's go ahead and try and talk to this bot. So off the bat, when I try to restart the conversation, here you can see the welcome message being rendered. Now, if I say something like help, then that particular trigger got picked up, and then the bot came back with the help response. If I said cancel, then that trigger got picked up. If I say something like hi, then now the bot is doing the multi-turn prompting where it's asking me for my name. So let me answer the question, and let me give it a date of birth. And sure enough, it remembered that, and it said my next birth date is on such and such date. If I ask something like, how many days till July 4th, then it comes back with the response for that. And finally, what historic events happened on May 9th? Now it's making a HTTP call to the public API, and it came back with at least one other celebrity birthday as well as a random event of significance that happened on that specific date. Next up, let's look at some of the advanced language generation capabilities as well as how we add those to the simple birthday bot that I just showed you guys. First, let's look at conditional response generation. If you see the interaction on the left, the user said hi, and the bot, depending on the current hour of the day, might choose to come back with and say good evening or good morning. With Bot Framework Composer, you can leverage the power of adaptive expressions to write these simple through to complex expressions that enable your bot to generate conditional responses. The underlying language generation subsystem offers if-else-if constructs as well as switch case default constructs for you to achieve conditional response generation, and you will see a demo of those in a little bit. Here is another example. In this case, the user asked how is Microsoft doing, and the bot is looking up the stock price for Microsoft and came back and rendered a card. Let's jump into demo 2, where you will learn about how to add these advanced language generation capabilities to the birthday bot. We are back in Composer, and I'm going to show you 4 key features that I'm going to add to the simple birthday bot that takes advantage of some of the advanced language generation capabilities offered by Bot Framework Composer. To start with, I want to upgrade the welcome response. So right now it's a simple textual response, but I want the bot to be able to come back with buttons, so it's more helpful for the user to understand what is it the bot can do. Let's see how to do that. Bot Framework Composer offers a dedicated view where you can manage all of your bot's responses. In the bot responses view, you can see all of the language generation aspect of your bot, but that lists all the responses grouped by specific dialog. So in this case, the welcome message is in the main dialog or root dialog. So jump into the edit view there, and let's add a couple of templates. Here I'm adding a welcome user template that is a structured response template that's got both text response as well as suggested actions. Suggested actions render as buttons on channels that support it. And with the power of language generation, you can see that the textual response here actually is composing other templates. So I've got the reference to a greeting phrase template as well as a help question template. Variations in language generation are represented as a list. So in the greeting phrase, when you see one of these variations, the language generation subsystem will actually pick one of these at random during runtime. Now that we have added the template, to wire it up, let's switch back into the prompt or the input or send activity editor. And I'm going to say I want to use the welcome user template. The second upgrade I want to do is in the get user profile. Remember, once the user specified their profile, the bot comes back and says, okay, your next birthday is on such and such date. Now, apart from coming back with the next birth date, I also want the bot to come back and say what the user's zodiac sign is given their month and date of birth. Let's see how to do that. Again, I'm going to switch to the responses view, but this time I'm selecting the get user profile dialog because that's where this template belongs, or this response is. And let's add a different set of templates. So I'm going to add this template for profile readback, and here it is. It actually, now you can see it comes back with the readback for the next birthday, but it also includes the zodiac sign. The zodiac sign relies on this other template that uses conditional response generation to look at both the month and date of user's birth to come back with their zodiac sign. Now let's get this template hooked up. So let's switch back and go on a begin dialog and replace this with profile readback. Good. The last thing or last upgrade I want to do to this bot is to use an adaptive card. So in this case, where we have the bot come back and render a celebrity birthday as well as a random event, right now it's all happening in text with like markdown decoration. But let's say we want to use an adaptive card. I actually used adaptivecards.io to design a card. So for sake of time, I'm just going to stick that in here. Let's do the fax readback template. And as you can see, this is the adaptive card itself that was copied from adaptivecards.io. I used that to design it. And with adaptive expressions and language generation, you can do rich data binding into the cards itself. So here I am data binding to the card as well as a celebrity birth date, as well as other historic event that happened on that particular day. And let's talk to it in emulator. Now, as you can see, off the bat, the welcome message has been upgraded and the bot came back with buttons. So I can simply click on the button. Let's go ahead and do the profile. The bot is asking me for my name. Let me provide my name and my date of birth. And as you can see, we now used conditional response generation, and the bot is able to come back and say what my zodiac sign is. Let's try to do the other scenario. What historic events happened on July 4th? You should see the typing indicator. There you see the typing indicator. And then now you see the adaptive card that actually comes back with a celebrity birthday as well as an important event that happened on that specific date. So what did we learn about language generation? With Bot Framework Composer and language generation, you can start simple and then layer in sophistication. You can start with very simple textual responses, but then use some of the capabilities like conditional response generation, as well as use ability to generate variations. Finally, you can use some of the advanced language generation capabilities to generate rich cards, as well as bot framework activity types. Next, let's look at adding some of the advanced language understanding capabilities to the birthday bot. To start with, let's look at ability to handle interruptions. In the example here, the user says, I need to book a flight ticket, and the bot responds by saying, sure, what's your departure airport? The user then talks about something that is completely different from the current conversation topic and asks about the weather in Seattle. In the next demo, you will see how to add ability to handle interruptions to the birthday bot. Here is another example. The user starts off by saying, I need to book a flight ticket. The bot asks for the departure airport, and the user in this case provided two pieces of information. They just didn't answer the departure airport, but also provided a destination airport and a specific date. Having the bot be able to capture different pieces of information or entities provided by the user in order or out of order in general is referred to as flexible entity extraction. Next, let's look at the third demo. Here you will learn how to use some of the advanced language understanding capabilities offered by Bot Framework Composer to achieve things like interruption handling as well as flexible entity extraction. We're back in Composer, and for this demo, I want to actually show you some things that do not work with the way the birthday bot is set up right now. And then I'll walk you through how to fix those issues using some of the advanced language understanding capabilities. So if I switch back into emulator and let's go back into profile, and when the bot is asking me for my name, if I say, why do you need my name? The bot actually has no intelligence to answer that question at this point in time, and that of course is an interruption. But the bot went ahead and assumed that entire string to be the user's name, which is really bad. Let's try one other scenario. I'm back in profile, and if I said my name is Vishwak, and there is no flexible entity extraction whatsoever here. You don't get any of this out of the box, but with the advanced LU capabilities, Composer makes it possible for you to achieve all of these scenarios. What would have been ideal, of course, here is that the bot took just Vishwak as the name. Let's go ahead and see how to get this all sorted out. Back in Composer, every single dialog itself has its own recognizer. And so to start off, the get user profile dialog did not have any recognizer, but to enable these local interruptions, I'm going to have it use Lewis. The next thing I'm going to do is add a new trigger. I'm going to call it Y, and I have already added some or defined some utterances that I want to stick in here. So let's go ahead and stick in this set of utterances. So why do you need my name? Why do you ask? Why do you need the birthday? And then I also have a couple of entity definitions here. In response to this local trigger within this dialog, we want to come back with the response. And so the response is going to be, why is it the bot needs the person's name? And so here the bot is going to say, I need your name to address you correctly. By the very act of adding this trigger does not enable interruption. And that's because every single input within Adaptive Dialog and Composer has a dedicated property that you can use to control interruption. It can either be a Boolean true or false, or you can write simple or sophisticated expressions using adaptive expressions to control when exactly your bot is going to allow interruptions, as well as what types of interruptions it's going to allow. For now, to start with, let's just set this to true. The next thing we want to have this bot be able to do is to be able to understand and pick up flexible entities. And so to do that, I'm switching to the user input section. This is where I can take advantage of some of the local language understanding capabilities offered by the input subsystem itself. And I'm adding a bunch of utterances. So there is one other thing to do. So I see here that I added an entity. Whenever the recognizer picks up a person name entity, it's not going to be automatically set to the property, but you can do that using the value property here. So I can just set that to equals @person_name, which means any single time we get a value for this entity person name, set that as the user's name. You can do something similar for the datetime dialog. I just want to show here real quick that the allow interruption by default is set to false. Let's go ahead and restart the bot. It's going to take a while because behind the scene Composer is updating all required Lewis applications that we have changed. And so now that we're back in emulator, let's go ahead and do the profile scenario. And first I'm going to ask, why do you need my name? The right thing happened. The bot picked this up as a local interruption and came back with the response for the why trigger. But not just that, with the power of adaptive dialogues, we went back and reissued a prompt on the active input because that was still incomplete. Now if I say something like my name is Vishwak, then with flexible entity extraction, we just pulled out the user's name rather than taking the entire string as the user's name. So what did we learn about language understanding? So just as with language generation, Composer makes it easy for you to start with very simple language understanding, but then you can scale into more complex or sophisticated language understanding. You can do things like handling interruptions, both within a dialogue itself or local to that dialogue, as well as wire up to handle global interruptions. You can use the inputs and the language understanding available within the inputs to do flexible entity extraction. And as always, you can take advantage of adaptive expressions to completely control both how interruptions are handled, as well as how a particular trigger within a dialogue is selected. That wraps up our session. So please visit aka.ms/composer to get set up with Bot Framework Composer. The set of materials, the birthday bot that you saw in this session, is available at the link below. And thanks for your time.